Hello, welcome back to a Fly on Heaven's Wall. Day 5 of my 40-day prayer condition for President Trump in America. The question that we really have to answer is, how do we, as people of God, respond to the chaos of our society? From family breakdown to school violence to lack of education to citizen ignorance, violence in the streets, and the hatred spewing forth from liberal progressives and even the far right. For a nation who, as a majority, believes in God, our society is too riven by chaos and conflict. Those of you who are aware of and know World War II history, when we fought Germany and even Japan, their soldiers and their civilians were united in hatred against us. When they were defeated, it's as if those peoples were released from a thrall to the Nazis and to the Japanese militarists. Suddenly, the war was over, and the crazy that they had been living under and operating under just went away. And they became normal citizens again, responsive to law and order, responsive to morals, and most importantly, responsive to their own conscience. The one thing that we learned from the left-wing liberal progressive ideology that spawned Nazism and fascism is that it subverts the human conscience. It's almost like a lobotomy. It just removes it from people, and they are pressured and become willing to do any action. Today in America, we're in the same boat. We are faced with Americans, our national brothers and sisters, who are literally held in thrall of the liberal progressive ideology. And they are so irrational and emotional and angry and hateful. They've lost sight of reason. And while many of them can speak rationally sounding, their arguments fall apart when they're questioned. And then, at that point, they lose their rationality. They melt down on national television. They send out thousands of protesters in the streets to burn cars, throw rocks and newspaper stands through windows of businesses, and beat up the people in the streets they don't like. This is the reality that President Trump is in right now. And this is the reality that we Christians, we followers of God, Jews, God-centered Muslims, God-centered Christians, and God-centered people of all faiths. And we have to understand the core essence of what we stand for and how we're going to fight this pernicious enemy. Because liberalism, progressivism equals death. It is the bubonic plague of the mind. Once you're infected, your ability to act human, to be rational, to be tolerant and forgiving and loving goes out the window. As soon as you encounter a person who disagrees with you, opposes your worldview, as my kids say, they lose their ish. Our core essence in confronting this evil in our nation is the principle of absolute love. That is the unconditional love of God. And I'll talk more about this in future videos. But in this prayer for President Trump and the country, I want to just emphasize that absolute love is our guiding light in dealing with these people who seek to overthrow President Trump, overthrow our constitutional system to implant a whole new system of government that embodies the values that they insist society should have. And they are not the values of freedom. They are the values of a faux equality in which everything human can be sacrificed and must be sacrificed to achieve. And so for decades we have seen liberals sacrifice freedom after freedom to achieve a false equality between people. And still they can't find their equality. So the fight against liberal, progressive, godless ideology has to start and end with the principles of absolute love. So please join me in a quick prayer. Beloved Father, our parent in heaven, the parent of all humankind, of every race, of every creed, of every nationality, of every political thought. Father, you are the parent of all of us. As we fight each other and strive to implement your will, and others strive to implement Satan's will, we have to always remember that we are fighting our own brothers and sisters. And we do not want to destroy them. We want to remove them from their thrall to this evil, pernicious ideology that teaches and encourages only hate and conflict and destroys all chance of human happiness. We've seen it for 100 years, and we've seen it through the Second World War and the Korean War, the Vietnam War, through what's happened in China, North Korea, Germany, Italy, Russia, so many nations, Father, Western Europe, taken over by socialist and social welfarist systems of government in which citizens' rights are sacrificed on an altar of faux equality and submission to the will of others. Donald Trump has injected himself, Father. I think you called him. I think he's answering a call. And he is challenging this. He is challenging this effort to overthrow the greatest country that's ever existed in the history of the human race. Father, you founded the United States of America. You founded our freedoms. You inspired in the hearts of our founders the idea that human rights are natural rights that emanate from your will, that you created us with these rights. And they built us a government whose sole purpose was to protect and uphold those rights from being trampled upon by other people or by government itself. But we have seen over time how the pernicious idea that rights are not absolute, that people don't really have rights, that they have are gifts, privileges from government. And this has permeated our federal government and the whole of the American people to cow them into submission. But Father, Americans rose up and they elected Donald Trump, who loudly proclaimed that this vision of a essentially fascist America under the rule of tyrannical, violent political correctness in the service of faux equality. And he has made and is making many enemies, Father. Enemies in the Republican Party, enemies in the Democrat Party, enemies among liberal progressives across the country, and even enemies, Father, amongst the Christian church, who should be supporting him, but are confused in their understandings of your will. Father, it is your will that this nation survive. It is your will that this nation remains a beacon of individual human freedom. Because in freedom, everything good prospers, and your will finds its way out into the world. Father, I pray that you will be with President Trump tonight and tomorrow and every day. I pray, Father, that President Trump can avoid the hubris and the arrogance that can come with great authority that he has as the president. Father, he's a naturally brash man. He's naturally bombastic. These things are his nature. And if he remains humble to you, these things can be used for your will. But if he gets confused, these same characteristics of his personality can instead lead him to doing counterproductive things that harm your providential efforts to expand the realm of your unconditional love in this world. So I pray, Father, that Donald Trump will be protected from that, that you and the good spirit world that surrounds him can be ever present and ever aware to guide him and encourage him and inspire him to always turn to his best nature and to always be humble before the altar of his power, and be humble, Father, before the example that you and Jesus and Reverend Moon and many other people have set over the course of history through lives of righteousness. So I offer you this prayer, and I pray in true love. Amen. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time on A Fly on Heaven's Wall.